Good morning and welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Grubb here, your host, and Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering wisdom for living on your, doing a talk program covering natural health on your Wednesday morning, rise and shine and give God the glory. Now, this morning here, we're looking at a very straightforward topic, and the topic we're looking at here this morning is how to prevent overeating. How to prevent overeating is our topic here for this morning. This is what we want to look at our process of meditation for this morning as we contemplate some of what's going on in the world. As you know, yesterday was a major holiday, and part of the holiday is part of every holiday is eating. But yesterday was special because of some of the competitive eating that went on. So I want to spend some time looking at this here this morning as we look at some tips and things that you can do to prevent overeating, because you don't want to be overeating. You don't want to partake of too much and then run into some health problem. So we want to give you something here this morning to bless you. So we'll begin this morning with a short prayer, and then we go into our talk for this morning. Father, who art in heaven, we thank you again for your word, for the blessings of life. And we pray, Father, that you may be with us as we look at these things, dear Father, that we might be healthier and happier people. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So again, we want to look at some tips here on how to prevent overeating, and how to be just healthier in general. And one of this is, one thing we can know about preventing overeating is that it takes an exercise of the will. And when you exercise the will, you start to learn to exercise self-control in various different aspects of your life. The more you can exercise self-control in different aspects of your life, is the better that you can be when it comes on to all aspects of your life. And so the principle that I always take from the Bible is Christ simply states that it is when we want to follow him that he tells us to deny ourselves, pick up our cross, and follow Jesus. And so it's important to understand this and to take this into account. And so before I get into my talk on the specific tips, I'm going to read some things to you about what happened yesterday in New York with the hot dog eating competition by Nathan's hot dog eating competition. And the information I'm going to share with you is actually going to be in line with some of the tips I'm going to share at the second half of the program and towards the middle of the program. Because some of the things that the people do to be competitive eaters of anything, competitive eating, to prepare themselves to be able to eat the gigantic or enormous amount of food that they eat, are actually some of the tips that you need to partake of, or the opposite of that you need to do to actually eat less and control your eating. So I have 3 articles I want to read to you, and then I have some health tips that I want to share with you as how you're going to be able to control your eating, and in general just exercise self-control in all aspects of your life. Keep that in mind. So I'm going to start out here by reading this article here. And first I'm going to give you some numbers when it comes on to the amount of food that the winner, before I get into the mindset of the winner, the amount of food the winner which is called Joey Chestnut, ate yesterday. So just give you an idea that he ate 72 hot dogs. So 72 hot dogs he had. And in those 72 hot dogs, I'm going to read here, Joey Chestnut set the Nathan's hot dog eating contest record by eating 72 hot dogs in 10 minutes en route to his 10th championship on Tuesday. So keep this in mind. Part of overeating is the speed in which you eat. So this is one of the first tips. In order to eat less, you need to slow down the process. All right, so the speed, because normally what it is that if you ever see a hot dog eating competition, the person eating don't eat slow. They don't chew their foods. So the food they're eating, they take a bite and a few chomp, swallow, chomp, swallow, chomp, swallow. They don't eat the food or chew the food. So normally one of the first tips we'll say here is you slow the process down in your eating. And this will help you to prevent overeating by simply chewing the food. How many times you masticate the food. So your mastication is you're chewing the food. You're going to chew the food 20, 25 times. It could even be 30, depends on what it is. So that's a significant, important thing. So first thing off the bat, if you want to be able to control and prevent overeating, you have to chew your food. If you inhale your food, or if you take only a few bites and swallow, they won't work. You will never be able to prevent overeating. You have to chew your food, because not only this makes the food digest better, but it makes the body be able to keep up with your digestive process. Why the body keeps up great with digestion when you chew the food and slow the eating process is because it takes a while for the body to weigh and calibrate how much foods, how much calorie you eat. If you dump a whole lot of food real fast down your stomach, what will happen is that the body will not catch up with you fast enough. And by the time the body is trying to tell you to stop, or the brain is telling you to stop, you already overate. So slowing down. So notice Joey Chestnut in 10 minutes ate 72 hot dogs. This is important when it comes on to overeating. So do the opposite, to actually eat slower. So you don't want to eat that much calories that fast. It is not surprising that Chestnut and all competitive eaters consume a crazy number of calories in a short amount of time. But for Chestnut, a 72 hot dog performance would take a grueling toll on any average person's body. So 72 hot dogs comprise about 20,160 calories. So remember now, he's eating what you would say to be the average person would do about 2,000 calories. That means some do more, some do less. So the average person do about 2,000 calories a day. So what he did there, the feat that he did, is phenomenal, because what he's doing there is that he's consuming what a person, 10 times what a person will eat in a day in 10 minutes. So that speaks again to the idea of speed. Normally, you will overeat if you go too fast. Got to slow yourself down. You got to pace yourself. You got to know and tell yourself, and this is another important way to prevent overeating, that this is not your last meal. You know, it's like if the doctor told you you're about to die, and you went to the table, and you're so panicking because you're thinking probably this is the last meal, or this is some of the last of the meals I'm going to eat, and you're going to die soon, and so you eat the meal as if you're panicking. You got to tell yourself, this is not going to be the last meal I'm going to eat. I'm going to have to slow it down. I'm going to enjoy this meal. So he ate 72 burgers, or 72 hot dogs, and he did it in 10 minutes, 20,000 calories. That means it will take you 10 days to eat the amount of food that he ate in 10 minutes. Keep that in mind. 56,000 mgs of sodium, 1,296 grams of fat, 432 grams of saturated fat. And then I'll just jump down here to total carbs. Total carbs, because remember he has the buns. So he did about 1,728 grams of carbs. You know what it's like if you ever go on a treadmill or any type of exercise device that gives you the amount of carbs you're burning. And you will see that what you would have to do to eat this similar volume of carbs, you would have to exercise for probably an hour for, I think, probably a week, 2 weeks. I could be wrong with that, but it's about, you're doing an average about, you probably have to exercise for an hour for probably 14 days, moderate exercise, before you burn the amount of nutrients that you just put in, carb-wise, not fat, not anything else, not the sodium, anything else, just the carb. So just imagine that's part of the problem, because the volume is so high. So I want to be able to cut down on volume. I want to be able to give you some tips how to prevent overeating. So we notice here that just from this number, we can see very quickly that just the sheer volume of food becomes a problem. I know there's people who are always going to have weight problem, and it could be they could have some health problem like thyroid and stuff like that. But I was going to say, when you the way the body metabolizes cholesterol, metabolizes fat, but when you look at it, it's still going to come back down to the amount of calories intake, the amount of calories a person intake. So you want to consider well that it's best to practice some of these things I'm going to cover for the next hour, or up until 8 o'clock this morning here, because I want you to consider well that you have to know that if you eat too much, you're going to always have a weight problem and other health problem. So here we can see that if when you eat fast, you can get in a lot of food. So one of the first things I want to get you here is to slow your eating down, to actually masticate your food, to chew your food actually 20 to 30 times, depending on the food. And remember here, we're going to take some of these 3 articles plus some other things I have to share with you on how to prevent overeating. And we're going to reverse engineer these things, because we're going to look at what the person who is a competitive eater is doing to eat that much food. And you're going to now take some of those principles and, rearrange them and use some of the same principles, how not to eat too much food. So keep that in mind now. The person eats fast, they don't eat the food. Another principle here I want to share with you is that when you're eating your food, you have to think about it that the biggest part of eating the food is not just the satisfaction you feel in your stomach when your stomach is full and feeling expanded, and you feel that satisfying feeling that is there. But also you need to remember that part of the excitement of eating food is that you have this experience in the mouth, where the mouth have a bursting of flavors. Well, if you're just chewing and biting a few times and swallowing, you really never get to enjoy the full flavors of the food. And especially foods that are high in flavor, that are 3-dimensional flavors, that mean they're deeper flavor profiles, you won't be able to enjoy because you're chewing too fast, you are swallowing too fast. Because there are certain flavors you don't get unless you masticate multiple times. So you want to just calm yourself down. You want to chew a little bit. And you want to enjoy the deeper flavor profile of foods. So remember that. Keep that in mind. I'm going to go straight to the next article here. And I want to share with you some here in this article. I'm going to give you these next 2 articles talk about some of what the competitive eater is doing when they're preparing for food. And this was in the sports section of USA Today. And a competitive eater explained how to train to prepare for the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. You think you with your seemingly endless appetite could just walk into a Nathan hot dogs eating contest and done an absurd amount of francs in 10 minutes. Nope, you'll be wrong. Like any other athlete, professional eaters train and strategize for events. Just ask Crazy Leg Conti, a veteran of 13 contests, and he'll break down all the things you would think about when it comes to downing dogs. Hot dogs are a little different in that Nathan makes a natural casing some people find a little chewier. Cotton told For the Win in advance of the 2017 contest in Coney Island. You have to marry kind of a dense meat with a fluffy bun, and you're dunking the bun in liquid. Eaters have an alternative beverage movement. I used Tang. If it was good enough to go into space, it was probably good enough to dunk your bun in. That's to avoid flavor fatigue. So keep that in mind now. And before, I'm gonna keep reading a little bit more, but just let me say this here. Part of the problem with overeating there, notice he says that while the competitive eaters are eating, they dunk the bun in water so that they can just swallow it. Because if the bun is dry, you're gonna have to chew. If you chew, it's gonna slow down the amount of food you can take into your stomach fast, or get it down your esophagus. Because the esophagus normally moves the food by peristalsis. Well, with competitive eaters, as you're gonna find out, they don't allow peristalsis to work to get the food down. What they do, they force the food down. But in order for you to force the food down, it has to be wet. So competitive eaters, what they'll do, they'll wet the food. So one of the other principles that I'll encourage you here when it comes on to not overeating or to prevent overeating is to not eat and drink at the same time. It's to chew your food and allow the saliva to wet the food. By doing this, it helps slows the process down. and it makes the food digest better because now you need the enzymes in the saliva to break down starch. And so when you're chewing your food, especially in a situation like if you were eating hot dog and you're going to chew the hot dog with the bun, then you'd want to get the saliva. So instead of making the water or the drink or the juice become the thing that washes the food down, you make a saliva wash it. By simply doing that, what will happen is that you'll force your body, so to speak, or the food you're eating to be properly digested and to go down slowly. The slower it goes down is the more the body can sense what's going on and know if you have enough calories or if you have enough volume of food. So keep that in mind. So professional eaters, what they're doing is they're wetting the food. So they don't just drink. They literally dip the food in water so it can slide down because they're not chewing and they're not allowing the body natural processes to take the food down. And this is important because if you think about it, most of the time with overeating, if the person would not drink and eat, what will happen is that they probably choke on the food because they're swallowing so fast that the food is not moist enough and it will get stuck in their throat. And so if you know that you need to hold back, especially is when you start to eat and the food starts to feel abrasive in your throat, that just simply tells you that you're not chewing enough. Especially if it's something that is like of a crust to it, it's hard. You need to know, very important for you, to chew the food and to make the saliva moisturize the food, not the drink. And as I say, most people can't eat without drinking because they need a drink to wash the food down because they're swallowing so fast. They're not even chewing fast, they're swallowing fast. But if you slow down, masticate your food, let the saliva do the moisturizing of the food or the wetting of the food, then what will happen, you'll find that when you do swallow, the food is soft and you won't have any abrasive action in your esophagus going all the way down into your stomach. And the food will be able to digest easier and you will have gas and bloating because all that food can't be properly digested because the enzymes in the mouth or in the saliva is not being applied to the food. So keep that in mind. So just that. So notice here we're kind of reversing what a competitive eater does to kind of get some of the tips that we're going to get this morning here as how not to overeat and how to prevent overeating. So hot dogs are a little different in Nathan's. Oh no, so I'll read that again. So yes, no, the other thing that they do here is notice that if you're eating food and there's a point where the body has what they call flavor fatigue, because when you're eating food, after a while, there's different words that different culture use. One of the words I grew up using was the word Clyde. You get Clyde of the food, or the food become like sort of feel almost nauseated, because what it is, you're eating the food, but the food you start to become bored with the food. So normally that's the reason. Normally that's one of the trigger points that tell you you've had enough. So what it is that the person will drink and drink so to avoid flavor fatigue. So this is one of the reasons why I think it's not good to even drink, because sometimes the person having flavor fatigue, and that flavor fatigue is a good thing. We probably tell you stop eating. You had enough. But what it is, a drink can make you wipe the palate clean so that you can eat more. And when you eat more, then what happened, you have probably flavor fatigue again, and then probably a little drink again cause you to, okay, I can eat more again. It's just good to allow your body to tell you stop. And I'm sure you eat certain food, especially rich food. Foods that are like pastries, foods that are like milky, normally will give you flavor fatigue. But those are the foods that are sometimes the most fattening foods. So it's important to think about it like that foods that often are fattening foods, you need your palate wiped clean. Else your body will tell you, hey, you have enough. I'll give you an example. One of the ways they test like even flavor fatigue. I've ever had like aspartame, NutraSweet, or the stevia, the natural version. Normally those things, they take a while to get off your tongue. So the sweetness profile stays on your tongue. So because it stays on your tongue, you have that sweetness on your tongue, and it takes you a certain amount of swallow of your saliva to wash it off your tongue. Well, so normally if you're drinking something with those type of sweetness, sometimes you don't want to drink too much because your palate like, hey, look, I've had enough. So Keep that in mind. Now, when you think about sugar, what we call it cane sugar, brown or white sugar, one thing with brown and white sugar is that it doesn't stay on your tongue too long. So the moment you swallow, it takes about probably one or two swallow, and sugar cane sugar, the flavor of it or the sweetness of it is wiped off the tongue. So it makes you drink more and more because it doesn't go away. So keep that in mind. This is how the body works. So this is one of the reasons why it's important to chew your food, because as you're chewing your food, what it is, the saliva will wipe the flavor off, so you can keep eating. So the body is made to balance out itself, so you don't have flavor fatigue too fast. But if you keep drinking, what you do, you kind of refreshing your mouth, and then you can keep eating something that's probably just totally bad for you. So keep that in mind. So they normally drink, the people do this, they'll do drinks, so to kind of sometimes wash their mouth out, so their brain don't tell them stop. Because I'm sure you have had experience where you're eating, where your brain tell you you've had enough, and you can override that, but that's never good. Okay, so because you're reading the article here, yes, flavor fatigue. Basically, your taste buds getting bored of what you're eating, which might cause you in a competition. Can't you remember a rookie eater who decided to eat a brownie halfway through a Bratwurst eating contest just to mix things up? A strategy that backfired because, well, it's more food to digest. But there's also the physical and mental training he says he and others do. One eater, he reported, goes to a sports psychologist and runs Ironman competition. So when you think about this, this is important, because what it is that part of overeating is that you have to force the body and encourage the body. Now, here's the thing. You could learn to overeat as a child where you were actually forced to overeat by your parents, because your parents keep saying, eat more, eat more. And what you do, you blow past the natural barriers. And as you blow past your natural barriers now, as an adult, it's okay. It's just normal for you to overeat. Well, the same way a competitive eater will kind of force themselves by becoming psychologically hamped up, and they run competition, do marathons, do everything to get their mind to be able to get past the pain. So it is with actually self-control. You have to be able to learn to deal with the pain. This is why when I started off mentioning the scripture by Jesus, where he simply says, you must pick up your cross, you must deny yourself, pick up your cross and follow him. When you do this, it will benefit your life more because you're exercising. Notice here, it's exercising. Paul says this race is a competition for life. So as you're pressing hard, but you're pressing hard in the opposite direction. You're pressing hard, and you're getting a psychology to cut off, to stop, even you don't feel like stopping. Because often you know that you have had enough, but you don't feel satisfied, especially if you've overeaten multiple times. So there's a point where you have to be able to psych yourself up to like, look, I'm going to stop at a certain point. More to share on that later on. So Conti, who was a 3-sport athlete in college, who decided he was better at downing the pre-game meal, is a fan of pre-visualization and getting in a zen mind to ignore his fellow eaters, screaming fans, fireworks, and most important, his brain when it tells him his stomach might be full. So keep this in mind here, right? In order for a person to be a competitive eater, the person themselves have to get into a mindset. But it's the same thing when a person overeat. You have to get into a mindset. You have to visualize the food. So in a little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit about this concept of visualizing. Because what it is you have to do, you have to daydream the food, on food. So you have to be at a place where I'd say lunchtime, after you finish lunch, probably half an hour after you finish lunch, you have to start to think about dinner. And that will start messing you up to overeat. So part of preventing overeating is visualization. You have to stop daydreaming about overeating, and even sometimes spend time daydreaming and thinking about eating less. You have to get yourself into that mindset, because it's like he says, it's a Zen mindset. It's a mindset where you're focused on what you're doing. Part of focusing, you have to role play in your mind. You have to see yourself eating half the amount of food. You have to see yourself eating just 2,000 calories a day, especially if you're exercising. And so if your body only needs say 1,000, say 2,000 calories, let's go there, and you're gonna exercise, you're gonna burn another 200 calories, then you're guaranteed you will lose weight. But part of preventing overeating is to get into that mindset where you think opposite on food. When you think about food, you don't think that you're gonna do too much. You think you're gonna cut back. So you have to also ignore other eaters. We do this the opposite. You can't worry about what somebody else is eating, because remember, as human beings, because of sin, we can become very competitive. And so when we're competitive, we always want to think about the others. So if you see somebody eating 2 burgers, you're like, okay, I'm going to eat two, or I'm going to eat three. You have to think about yourself, because what you can eat is just what you need. What you need is not what I need, and what I need is not what you need. So very important. Also, you have to watch other people, because I know many times I've seen a situation where, say myself or somebody I saw overeating, it was simply because you were being psyched up by others. People will psych you up to overeat. People encourage you to get seconds and thirds, and you will basically overeat. So you want to keep that in mind. Also, your brain will tell you to stop. Learn to listen to your brain and allow your brain to take over and tell you when you have enough. Because sometimes you could eat a meal and just the structure, the setup of the meal on the plate, in the sense of what is there, the variety and whatever is there on your plate, might be volume-wise, it might be just enough that you need, volume-wise, the look of it, feel in your hand as you hold the plate. But as the setup of the meal, the structure of the meal, or the selection of the foods on your plate, might be that you could eat 3/4 of what's on the plate and be totally good. So you got to keep that in mind. And so you keep that in mind, because again, it depends on what's on the plate. Because again, if you eat a meal and you have a high amount of, say, cucumbers on your plate, cucumber is very heavy, dense, it's watery, and so you might eat it and you might feel full because it's a mass. And so you eat that and you're like, I'm good. Yeah, you're probably good. So it's important to listen to the mind. All right, and do the opposite of what they're doing here. Continue here on the article. It says each eater comes up with with own techniques, whether it's prayer or science based. So let's just pause there again. So when you want to prevent overeating, you have to take in what they're saying here as important. Now, so in competitive eating, personally, some people, because they believe in God and pray that God will give them the ability, strength to be able to gobble down all that food and not, basically give up before the competition ends, or, slow down. It's the same thing. I believe in prayer before a meal. You pray, you ask God to bless you, give you the willpower, the strength from His Spirit to not have you overeat. It's okay to pray for that in every single meal. I really believe that. If you know you have an overeating problem, just go ahead and pray, and God will bless you. And it says science-based. I'm going to explain more of the science later on. He said, I think the essence of what it boils down to is it is an odd sport in that food is the fuel. In any other sports, and in our sports, the food actually is the sport. And so he's right there. In competitive eating, as you saw yesterday, the food, it becomes the sport. Normally people eat to be able to do sports. These people eat for sport. And there's people who do this amateur also. Then there's actually strategy when it comes to how to ingest the fuel. 9 times Nathan champ, Joey Chestnut, recently told MLB network he starts training 2 months with simulated contests. And I actually watched one of those this morning, which is fascinating. That person will sit in the one I watched. He ate 77 hot dogs. So although in the competition he only did 72, he actually did 77 in simulated eating. And what he did, he had somebody with a timer, somebody that's encourage him, like you had a trainer encourage a champ to keep going. He had actually a video playing the competitive eating from Coney Island that happened the year before. So he had last year competition playing while he simulates the contest. So he's just get himself all psyched up and hamped up. And this is true also when it comes on to eating. Food is great, food is enjoyable and all that good stuff. But if you have yourself too much in front of every meal, you might go to town and hurt yourself. And so part of the psyche is not to hamp yourself up too much, not to get yourself so excited and so blown away. It shouldn't be that you shouldn't be laying in bed at night and say it's 10 o'clock and thinking about breakfast. If you do, you need to switch the thought. You need to exercise self-control and think about work or school or something else, but not be laying in bed at night thinking about food. Because if you do that, you're gonna hamp yourself up so much that after you eat and your body's satisfied, you're gonna be like disappointed because you were hamping yourself up and you're getting excited thinking you're gonna eat 2 or 3 plates. So keep it in mind, very important for you as you're doing this to consider, well, don't over fantasize about food, because that fantasy will trip you up every time you go to eat the food. Many times, most of this is in the mind, and so you got to get the mind right. So Conti explained that he does some technique training to prepare for contests. He discovers he likes to turn the bun inside out to get to the fleshy underside. In general, he avoids the food he'll be downing in contests a week in advance. So one of the things he's doing is eating the softer part of the bread. So he turn the bread inside out. So he put the hot dog on the outside of the bun and then wrap it the opposite direction. So this what happens, it makes it easier for the food to go down. So this is why it's important when you're eating. Another important thing to prevent overeating is to have some roughage, something that's going to slow you down. Don't over steam the broccoli. Have some lettuce. Have something that you have to literally chew, because if you don't chew it, it might get stuck in your throat. Now don't do it and then get the food stuck in your throat and say I caused you to choke. I'm just simply saying, when you have something to chew, it makes you eat slower because you have to chew it in order to swallow it. I'm sure people eat rice that they don't chew the rice, they don't swallow the rice. Keep that in mind. So give yourself something to chew. Don't eat just foods that don't need chewing, because the more you eat food that don't need chewing, is the more you're going to eat food. You need to have some food that's going to have some rough parts in it. So if you have the bread, fight through the crust of the bread, the crusty part of the bread. That will slow you down. There's one other factor to consider. You've got to eat something the night before, right? That's a question is asked. We all need something, some sustenance. Nathan says chestnut fast for 2 to 3 days before contest, but Conte's answer is ramen noodle soup because it's filling, it digests easy, and it's mostly liquid. But like many of Conte's technique, there's mental factors that go along with it. I like to look at the broth, he says, and reflect on where I've been in the sports and what the future is. So if you like to eat food and food is like a sport to you, you want to do the opposite. You want to sit and daydream about your past conquests and how you have gobbled down great amount of food. This will trip you up. Now, here again is something important. Part of a big consideration in preventing overeating, a big factor in preventing overeating is that it's important to eat 2 to 3 meals on a daily basis and not to fast. Fasting is a trip up. Fasting will trip you up when it comes down to overeating, because when you get too famished and too hungry, what will happen is that you will overeat. That's just simply what will happen. And so you don't want to get into a fast situation, especially if you have an eating problem. It's better to eat 3 meals a day, heaviest in the morning, a normal meal for lunch, and a very light meal in the evening before you go to bed, than to eat 1 large meal or 2 large meals. So if you're a person eat 2 large meals, I'll always suggest that they eat 3 meals and eat 3 normal meals. Because what happens often is that when you're fasting, you get so hungry that you just feel like you could eat a cow, and you really literally eat a cow. But when you fast, when you don't fast, what it is that you don't feel that famished. When you don't feel that famished, then you don't go so hard at the food because you feel so famished. So it's better to space your meal like 5 hours interval. So for 5 hours you eat, and then I mean, you eat, and then 5 hours later you eat another meal, and 5 hours later you eat another meal, and then you go to bed. By doing this, you don't get so hungry and you don't go so hard at the food. Notice here, he says the guy that wins, what he does is he fasts 2 to 3 days before the contest. This person here says he eats ramen noodles, so he eats empty calories. So by the time he goes to eat, the body is so tired that the body will just basically gobble up any food. So it's important. Eat solid meals through the day. Eat at a 5 hour interval. Make sure that you consume a satisfactory amount of meal. Don't undereat. Don't eat too small of a calories, and don't eat too large a calories. Just eat what you need to satisfy you. When you do this, then you don't get so hungry. Because I'll give you an example again. If you eat at 5 o'clock, you eat at 7 o'clock, that's not a good thing. Sorry, if you eat at 12 o'clock and eat at 7 o'clock, that's not a good thing, because that extra 2 hours of hunger will often cause you to go too hard at the meal. When you go so hard at the meal, you do some serious damage to yourself. So consider that well. When you do this, you find that your body will thank you for it. I'm going to go to the third article here before I share some more facts or things towards the end here. So this, I'm going to read this on the article USA Today about competitive eating, because again, that was a big thing yesterday over by the Nathan's hot dog competition in New York, Coney Island. But you know, it was a big thing in many people's cookout or family get together. There was some competitive eating going on. So the signs of competitive eating, how do they do it? So more information about how people do competitive eating to kind of give you some ideas how not to do it. On the 240th anniversary of his country's independence, American Joe Chestnut ate 70 hot dog in 10 minutes, a new record. So that was what was done that was done last year. Jaws, as Chestnut is known, put down a summer's worth of cased meat at the Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest in 2006. It was an impressive physical accomplishment and a gargantum intake of calories, fats, and salts. The competition, which started in 1916 and will be held again on Tuesday, is a true gut buster. To stuff in that much meat and bun, competitors train their stomach to expand, ruin their ability to feel full, and risk long-term damage to their digestive system. The normal human stomach is about the size of a Nerf football, says Mayo Clinic gastroenterologist David Fleischer. At its biggest, it stretches about 15%. So think about that. The stomach at its biggest stretches about 15%. If you know what's going on here, a person who do competitive eating is stretching their stomach about 400%. So the size of a Nerf football going 4 times. So that's unbelievable. And you can actually see this. If you ever see a video of a competitive eater, you can see the stomach expanding, or the abdominal area expanding, that you can literally see just lifting, because you know, eating 72 hot dogs is no minor feat to stuff down there. Another few things here also is that a person who do competitive eating normally they want to keep themselves even lean, because too much body fat will prevent the expansion of the stomach. So they want to be able to have the stomach as much space as possible by limiting even their fat. So again, normally the stomach only stretches 15%. So keep that in mind. So whatever you normally eat, even if you're going to stretch yourself and overeat, remember that your stomach normally won't go about more than 15%. So if you want to eat double, say you have a meal and it's Thanksgiving or whatever, it was Independence Day yesterday, and you wanted to stretch yourself, just keep in mind that if you do anything over 15% of your norm, you're hurting yourself. So keep that in mind. And if you do this, you're stressing yourself, and you might cause yourself to not know where you're full anymore because your body stopped working. On the other hand, back to the article here, competitive eaters can expand their stomach 2 to 3 times their normal size. Nobody knows for sure why people such as Chestnuts and 2015 champion Matt, the Megatode Stoney, can pull this off, says Fleischer, who said he's a long-time Nathan hot dog lover. Ivy League researchers suspect it's because competitive eaters train themselves to overcome the natural body triggers that tells us we are full. So remember, anyone can do this. Anybody can get to a point where they can force themselves. This can happen to you as a child, or this can happen to you as an adult, where you force yourself or somebody forced you to eat too much, and then by doing this over and over again, your body stops responding. The only way to bring the body back into the only way to bring your body back into order is to start to force yourself to eat less and less until you start getting more close to the what we'll call the 2,000 calorie diet. This is what you want. And again, depend on how much you exercise, and depend on how much you whatever work you do. If you do a work at a desk, or you do a work where you're physically on your feet all the time. So continue reading here. He was able to overcome this usual check and balance associated with eating by exercising extraordinary willpower and self-discipline during his training, consuming more and more food when others wouldn't be able to swallow another bite without feeling sick. So this is again a good thing the body does. The body can make you feel sick. So normally when you overeat, you're blown past this natural mechanism. They have done studies on the human brain where they collect electrodes and test the brain. And in a person that won't overeat, the parts of the brain will light up that tells you stop. They will have a lot of electrical impulses. When a person overeats on a repetitive basis, those parts of the brain has no electrical impulse. So the body stops sensing that you're full, and so you have to physically stop yourself. So it's possible to regain this ability, but the way you have to do the opposite of what competitive eaters do. What you have to do, you have to exercise extraordinary willpower, and you have to exercise self-discipline to reverse the damage that is caused by overeating. This will help you to prevent overeating. Not much has been written, back to the article, on what happens behind the bathroom door after eating competition. It is best not to imagine, because most of the person probably have some diarrhea, vomiting, all kind of stuff like that. But gastroenterologist Jim Summers Bell suspect the process could take a long time. I don't know if there is a grand expulsion of this or not, says Bell, an expert of the American Gastroenterologists Association. If they don't self-induce vomiting, it may take a long time to be emptied from the stomach. Because remember, depending on the volume of the food and depending on the type of the food, it depends on how fast you move the food through your system. A plant-based diet will go through in about 5 hours, 4 or 5 hours, depends on the volume. Food that have probably the most difficult food to break down and digest would be pork. It could take probably 72 hours to go through the system. It's just very, when I say through the system, the meat will, the plant-based will go through the system about 24. A heavy meat like pork will go through in 48 to 72 hours. It depends. So again, it depends on the volume, and it depends on the type of food. I'm sure you have had food where it starts to react bad in your stomach, and it gets stuck in your stomach and can't go out, and the only way to get it out is actually to vomit it. The stomach won't set it down. So you can understand what's going on here after a meal like this. After eating, a normal person's stomach will return to regular size in about an hour or two. The food exits the stomach into a small intestine to be absorbed for nutrients, then the colon, and well, you know the rest. In a typical case, it takes somewhere between 4 to 24 hours for food to move from the stomach to the bowel. This is what I was saying earlier. So notice 4 to 24 hours. Depends on the food, depends on the volume of the food. Keep that in mind. So you want to know that it's better to eat in intervals and eat the amount of food you're going to need to make up that 2,000 calories than to try to get it in 2 meals or 1 meal. Better that way. Ingesting that much sodium could produce a lot of gas and diarrhea, Bell says. Electrolyte abnormalities caused by the gorge fest could cause heart irregularities. Yeah, competitive eaters aren't the biggest amongst us. Chestnut is 33, is 6 feet 1, and he weighs 230 pounds, while Stone is 25 and just 5 feet 8, 130 pounds. Perhaps part of the reason is because most of the calories competitive eaters take in aren't absorbed by the body. The small intestine recognizes when it doesn't need nutrients. Fleischer said, in the case of big eating competition, most food, he says, exit the small intestine and not absorb. So keep that in mind. Again, not an important thing, because somebody will say, well, I have to eat a certain volume of food. Keep it in mind that if you overeat, the food does not get properly digested, because number one, most of the time you're overeating, you're not going to chew the food, hence you're not going to get saliva on the food, hence the carbs not going to break down properly. So when you overeat, most of the time the body just trying to get rid of the stuff because they can't absorb and get the nutrients out of the stuff. This is why you could have a person who overeats and still have calcium deficiency problem. They have bone density problem, because again, they're eating volume and they're getting fat from the fat, but nutrients wise, they're deficient in nutrients. They're deficient in nutrients that's good for their health. Because what happened, the digestive system not working because there's so much putrefaction going on, and you can tell. So what you want to do, you want to eat and make sure your body has just the right amount that you'll be able to extract the nutrients from the food and get the food. So again, to me, one of the ways of preventing overeating is to know that most of that overeaten food that you ate too much of, that food is not going to get, you're not going to get any much nutrients from the food. So it's best just to avoid overeating in the first place. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. Because again, I'm sure if you don't need this information, there's somebody you know that need it. It's important to note it's mental, most of this. It's your psycho, it's psychosomatic. You're working with your mind. If you're overeating, no. Most of what you eat in excess will not properly digest. This is why a person could do this type of eating and not get overweight, because they're just not partaking of the food that can be digested. It's just too much, and the body just basically try to get rid of the junk, and that's why there's so much fermentation and so forth going on. And so basically, there's more there that I'm going to read, but I want to go through a list with you here of some specifics that you can do to basically maintain yourself in a so that you prevent overeating. So first thing here I want to say to you is, other than everything I said so far for almost so far in the talk, is at the beginning of every meal, before you begin to eat, serve a plate fully with all you should eat. So normally, don't plan for seconds. Just tell yourself, I'm not going to go for seconds. I'm going to serve myself everything I need in this first plate. As you prevent overeating. And this works. If you do this, this will work. I can guarantee you that this will work. You just serve all that you need. You say to yourself, I need this amount of food, and you serve yourself that. And don't plan for go back for anymore. Right? So you do this because what normally will happen is that, remember, it's a mental visualization. The person starts to mentally visualize that, wow, I'm gonna eat 2-3 plates of food. Forget about that. Don't eat 2-3 plates of food, and don't make the plate. Don't say, oh, yeah, I heard this presentation, and what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna practice it. I'm gonna serve myself all that I need in one plate, and then make a volcano on your plate. Don't do that. Just serve yourself what you know you need, and estimate and sort of figure out how much calories on your plate. And calories work. Just go ahead and just serve yourself what you need, and please, not what you want. By doing this, you will help prevent yourself from overeating. The next point here is important. Set aside a portion of something you enjoy to leave on the plate as a discipline. Do not clean the plate. So part of your self-discipline to get tough and get hard mentally is that just serve one plate. So anyhow, part of your mental discipline is that you take something you like. So say you eating it, this is like something is one of your favorites, and you like to eat it. And normally, most of the time, what people will eat, they'll eat the thing that they like last. And so if it's just say it's a piece of chicken, they'll say this piece of chicken and they leave a piece of last. I'm gonna eat this piece last. What you do, you set aside a piece of chicken and you don't eat it. You don't eat it last, and you don't eat it. You're gonna set it aside, and it's gonna hurt you. Because remember, one of the biggest principles in overcoming anything is that you have to deny yourself. You take up your cross. So it's gonna cause you some pain. You're gonna feel like you're taking up a cross. And what you simply do is that you set that thing aside on your plate. and you say, man, that hurts. And don't go take 2 pieces of it and take more than you need and say, well, I'm going to set aside what I don't need. Just take what you need and then now go ahead and set aside a little piece, no, not too much, of what you want on the side of the plate, and don't eat it. Don't clean your plate, because you need to know, even if it's only 1 ounce on your plate, don't eat it. When you start practicing this, I guarantee it will work for you. As I said, it's important, just in case you join me here towards the end, I want to repeat this one. Make sure you chew your food. Most of the time, people who will have overeating problem don't chew their food. Because they don't chew their food, they just bite and swallow. Especially carbs don't get digested. This is why many people say, oh, I'm staying away from carbs. Well, why they stay away from carbs? Because carbs really only digest when it is mixed with saliva. But if you're chewing your food so fast, or you're biting it and swallowing, that carb ain't never getting digested with, breaking down, because there's no enzymes from the saliva. So masticate your food. When you masticate food, you get to taste the food better. I'll give you a good example. When you compare fast food, watching my time here, no, I'm running out of time, but you compare fast food to slow food or real food, what you find, fast food, you get all your flavor in the first bite. But with real food, natural, organically, naturally grown food, tree ripened food, you get most of your flavor profile at the third or fourth or fifth chew as you're chewing, biting your food. So what's happening there? A person that used to eating fast food will bite something that is natural and spit it out. They'll be like, oh, that tastes terrible. And it shocked them. Because they're not used to, say, bitter. They're not used to a certain type of flavor. So they spit it out. Because they don't know how to eat food by chewing. But when you learn to chew the food, what will happen is that the more you eat is the more you're like, oh, there's an extra flavor profile in the food. And you'll encourage you to eat more. The more you eat, you'll get more flavor until it's finally moistened and you can swallow. So remember this. So again, chew your food. Slow the time you eat. Try to not think of your meal time as a race until you get to the next meal. Just slow yourself down and relax. Not important thing I'll say here, because I'm running out of time, I don't want you to miss any of this, is that if you really have a problem with overeating, one of the things that you want to do is that just before a meal, about 30 to 60 minutes before the meal, you want to go right ahead and drink a glass of water, or even 2. Now, it takes about half an hour for water to get to your system. So you have to know yourself, because what you want to do, you don't want to feel so hungry. Because remember, I told you earlier in the presentation that you want to consider about this concept of fasting. Don't go too hungry before each meal, because if you get too hungry, you might eat a cow. So what you want to do is you want to make the body make you calm down a little bit. By half an hour to an hour before the meal, you drink some water. Some doctors in the past have suggested to people drink a natural fruit juice, like V8. I think that's a tomato juice or something like that. Something that's not sweet per se, that's going to chew up your calories, but it also could be filling. So something that it tastes nice, or just pure water. Kind of fill up your stomach with that, so that when you go to the table, you don't tear up the plate or the place. You just calm yourself down. So anything before the meal, half an hour to 60 minutes. So by then the water is out of your system. Because normally take about half an hour for water to get out of your system. Watching my time here. So you can't. So what you want to do is, I'd say half an hour before or 60 minutes, depends on how much. But normally about half an hour, you normally process water. You get some water in your system. And that will just satisfy some of that hunger until you get to the food. When you start to eat now, you control yourself. You don't go crazy. So also while you're eating, sometimes it's good to plan several pauses during your meal. So say, you listen to me here, you want to try this, but you're not used to chewing your food. Well, one of the things you can do, start doing, is just pause a little bit. So pause a little bit, probably 30 seconds, something like that, before you take the next spoonful. You're trying to slow yourself down. Because you want to exercise some self-control. It just helps you exercise self-control. And the more you practice this, believe me, it will work. Do not prepare your next bite while eating The last. So just before you go in, don't have your fork or spoon full with food. Or it depends, some people use shovels, but don't have your fork or spoon filled with food while you're eating. Make sure you finish, then you go for the next. So don't have it line up like it's a domino effect. Don't eat like a domino effect where it's just one after the other. Chew and then go for the next. You again exercise self-control. And I know this is more difficult in the beginning of the meal, because in the beginning of the meal normally you're so famished that you could bite your tongue. You just want to, as I say, visualize, pray, and just drink some water. Do something to calm yourself down, especially in the first, 4 to 6 spoon load. Because of that, you're just like, I'm just satisfying the hunger. Just don't do that. So, so important. So, slow down. Put your fork down between bites. So sometimes it's okay to just put your fork down and just leave it there. Even if it's a cereal eating, whatever, just put that spoon down and basically take a break from it. Because remember, all of this is mentally trying to overcome that ravenousness to grab more food. Another thing here important, if you're gonna go for seconds, or so somebody say, well, I didn't really feel full. I hear what you're saying, Lloyd, but this is just not really working for me. If you're gonna go for seconds, only take something raw or leafy foods. No seconds also with salad dressing. So if you're gonna go for seconds, so after you take all on your plate, and so you look at the plate and even a little piece that you left behind, you decided that gotta go down. All right, you feel bad about it, and you weren't following what I was saying to you. If you're gonna go for seconds because you still feel like you're not fully satisfied and you didn't serve yourself enough, only take vegetables and no salad dressing, or take something raw. Don't take cake as a second. Cake is not a second. Cake has to be part of the meal. When you serve yourself a slice of cake also. If you're gonna have a cake, everything should be in front of you. What you're gonna eat, the whole thing, cake and everything, and that's the meal. Because if you're eating cake it's not second. It's a whole meal sometimes. The amount of sugars and calories in it. Anyhow, so keep in mind, when you're gonna eat, go right in ahead. And if you're gonna have seconds, if you must have seconds, go for something vegetable. That means go over there, get some carrots, some cucumbers, some lettuce, something like that. No whatever, eat that. And if you can make it through a seconds of that, then you're good. And it'll fill you up, because especially cucumbers and stuff like that, they're heavier and they're more dense and more fiber. You have to chew them. You can't swallow them without chewing. Also, after you finish eating, 30 to 40 minutes after you finish eating, you want to get up from the table. You just want to go away, step away from the table. Sometimes you have to step away from the table. It is just like even for arguments, sometimes you have to go for a walk. That's another important thing also. Sometimes you have to go for a walk. If you're really having a problem with overeating, important also to, after you finish eating, you step away from the table, go straight to the bathroom, brush your teeth. Just clean your mouth and just try to discourage yourself from snacking or nibbling on more food, because you can take in a whole plate of meal by just nibbling. Also go for a walk or do a mild exercise. Nothing hard, but just something we go for a walk. Walk it off. Go for a quick little walk and just get some fresh air going and get the digestive juices flowing. Very important. Pre-plan your meal. If you go out or go to a restaurant, know exactly what you're going to eat and only order what you're going to need to eat. Don't order anything that you don't need. If you don't need it, don't order it. Or if you didn't plan it, I should say, don't order it. Just stick to your plan. And so no matter if you go and let's say you plan that you weren't going to have a slice of cake after your meal, just even though it pains you, just don't have a slice of cake after the meal. Lord will bless you with this. So pre-plan your meal. And then another thing about it is that when you're eating, you must be resolute. Remember, a lot of this is in the mind. Your mind is the control. And so you have to get into that habit of making sure the mind. Last thing I might say here, which is not insignificant, is major, is that when you're trying to prevent overeating, one of the things you have to do is get used to putting away even a small amount of food. I'll give you an example. Say you have 2 tablespoons or say half a cup of food left on your plate. Make up your mind that you're either going to throw that in the garbage or you're going to put it away for another time. But don't say, I must eat it because it's on my plate. Even if it's I'm just showing you here. Even if it's just a small amount, I prefer you put it away And somebody said, but that made no sense. Why would I put away 2 tablespoons of food? Or why would I put away half a cup of food? Because that half a cup of food could make the difference between you winning the battle with overeating. Just put it away or throw it in the garbage, but don't put it in your mouth. And when you start doing these and many things I suggested at the beginning, I guarantee you, you will prevent yourself from overeating. It's a guarantee. And so now we do this live talk program from Monday through Friday, covering various different topics. You can join me again tomorrow morning at 7 through 8. Let us pray. Thank you, Lord, again for your blessings. I pray that you may be with all those who are here and those who came and went. I pray that you may help them, dear Lord, to exercise the self-control and the discipline that they need, dear Lord, to maintain a healthy body. May you bless us, we pray, as we go through this day. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for being with me on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to doing our live talk tomorrow morning where we should discuss current events. Until then, I pray that you may walk with the King.